future of transportation in the Middle East. Super happy to have you guys here, but even more happy to have these panelists, very distinguished and very diverse. I think you're going to love the comments and the interactions we're going to have among them. So some focus here. We can talk about so many different things with transportation, but we decided to focus on one main area, and then towards the end, maybe touch on a few other areas. This main area is going to be aviation. As you see by the expertise that we have here, and also the massive boom in aviation, the aviation industry in the Gulf, it's a really interesting area to discuss, dissect, and sort of look at the future of. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the moderator for today, who's going to take you through some interesting questions and then leave some time for Q&A. Q&A, we're going to leave about 15 minutes towards the end for you to ask your questions. You see every one of you here. I think most people have a microphone. Very easy to use. There's a button that you need to hit when you want to ask your question, and then you hit it again when you're done asking your question. So I'll introduce Faris Saade. Faris is a partner at Strategy and formerly Boone & Company. He specializes in transportation in the Middle East. So if there was ever an expert on the topic, it would be Faris. So he set up a very interesting discussion for us to have, and I'll let Faris take the floor.
Thank you, George. Okay, welcome everyone. As George was saying, transportation is a very exciting sector in the Middle East, and hopefully in this discussion we'll be able to prove that to you. Before we start, allow me to introduce our distinguished guests that we have with us here today on the panel. The first guest is Captain Aysha Hamili. She's the permanent representative of the UAE at the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. Captain Hamili has started her piloting planes at the age of 16. So that's probably the age where I was a clumsy driver at best of cars. That's great. She's the first female pilot of the UAE and the first UAE representative. She has led over 80 international negotiations on air traffic agreement, and as you probably have heard, the UAE is a significant aviation market. Also, she has a master's in air transport management from the City University of London. The next guest is His Excellency Mr. Amer Hadidi. Amer is a former Minister of Trade and Industry in Jordan, and he's also the former CEO of Royal Jordanian Airlines. He is also a former advisor in the Royal Court, leading economic affairs, a mechanical engineer by training, and he has obviously held several prominent posts in the Jordanian governments and in the private sector. So we're very happy to have him with us today. Rodolfo Echeverria, I hope I pronounced it right. Echeverria is a former CFO of Queen Alia Airport, and he's also the former chairman of the Airports Council International, ACI. He's a Chilean by origin, and he has a lot of experience with infrastructure projects, including private sector participations, BOT, and many other forms of investments that are very important now to the Middle East. Okay, so before we start, I'm going to stay true to the stereotype about consultants and introduce to you the sector, a quick overview of the sector through 5 minutes of slides, basically, just to set the stage for everyone. So what makes the sector exciting in the region? If we just look at this chart, the aviation sector, the air traffic into the Middle East and out of it and within it is actually growing almost 3 times the global average. So huge, very significant growth. And the reason for this growth is that the region is home to 3 major aviation hubs. Okay, the most prominent of which is actually Dubai, with about 70 million passengers per year going through the Dubai airport, 23 million in Doha, 20 million in Abu Dhabi, and also significantly outside of the Arab world in Istanbul, 32 million. Okay, so really a huge role in global aviation and a significant perspective for continued growth. Supporting this growth and enabling it is also a major investments in tourism, so you could attract more traffic as well to these countries, and as well as in the airport infrastructure. And we're going to talk about that because you don't grow a hub that fast without pouring in billions of dollars in airport expansions. And actually, a couple of statistics here actually show what we are talking about. So today we have an installed base of about 1,180 aircrafts. We expect that number to triple in the next 15 years. A big chunk of those aircrafts have already been confirmed as orders to Boeing and Airbus. And as you can see here, there are huge expansion plans. I mean, the Dubai airport is going to have something a bit legendary, able to cater for close to 200 million passengers. The biggest constraint on that growth is really air traffic, airspace. There are just far too many planes really landing and taking off, especially in the UAE, in a very small geographic area. So that's again a testimony to the frantic growth pace of aviation. We are really reaching our limits. If we move to a discussion on the other side of transportation, the region is no different from the rest of the world in terms of urbanization. So as the UN statistics have shown, we expect today 50% of the people live in cities. In about 35 years from now, 70% of them will live in cities. So this is the urban century, as the Secretary General of the UN said. Well, the region is playing catch up from that perspective. There's a real boom in terms of railways and urban public transport systems, about 400 billion plus in investments, if we count also some of the bridges that will link some countries. So if you could just look at this map and see the number of projects, all these rail lines that you see did not exist. And they will suddenly exist in the next 5 to 7 years. So really a very significant boom there, that the region will look much different than it is today. This is also an example about how technology and digitization can be used to create a seamless travel experience. For example, this is an example of a commuter on a metro system. Just to tell you that when we build transport systems, there are many services that come with that and that will be needed in order for people to use them and to create the socioeconomic benefit expected of them. And actually, this is why we are seeing also the future of transportation will be also about connected cars, which are a great way for safe driving and for creating also nice commute experiences. It's also very likely that we'll see that soon in the Middle East. We know from many of our clients that they're looking at that. So all that excitement leads us to also, there are many startups in the transportation space. The Middle East has its own answer to Uber through Careem. There are also other startups like Carpool, Umran, and many others that maybe we'll touch upon in our discussion. So I will not dwell longer on that. Obviously, we're happy to discuss a bit more and hear your questions when in the course of our discussion. For now, we will start maybe with aviation. And my first question is to Captain Aysha. We have seen here the really rapid growth of aviation. And obviously, the UAE, where you come from, has been really at the center of it. Do we expect that growth to be sustained, and how do you really see it being sustained in the midst of growing competition?
First of all, thank you very much. It is an honor to be here among this distinguished panelists. Before I go in, I want to remind you the UAE within 1 month is going to celebrate its 44th National Day. So we are 44 years old only. To answer your question, the UAE government have a very strategic plan and aviation is part of that plan. It is not seen as a separate. Now, we see aviation as a catalyst of growth, and especially when it comes to economy and tourism. UAE is very unique as it has 7 emirates. And if you've seen, Faris already gave you an example of Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And we have, the other emirates, and each one of them have its own long-term strategy. And aviation is part of it. And based on that strategy, we calculate how much is it going to be, how much is in our investments, and how our policy is going to work around this. Now, the General Civil Aviation Authority, which is the body who is responsible for regulating the aviation within the UAE, works very closely with the local governments to make sure that our strategies are aligned with the local governments, the airlines, the airports, and also the security bodies. In addition to the airlines, we create the gap analysis and we draft our plans and strategies and make sure that they are implemented. I would describe our sustainable strategy on one word, which is collaboration. We work based on collaboration and cooperation. The second facet is international cooperation. As you know, it does not matter if the UAE have the best airlines or the best equipments or the best airports. We travel and we land in other destinations that do not have the equipments that are compatible with us, with our equipment. And some airlines fly to the UAE and their equipment sometimes are not compatible with our air navigation facilities. So we see growth. We see the sustainability on long run is to collaborate with those countries and assist in order to elevate their system and to make sure that their system are compatible with us, and wherever we see is necessary or needed. One important point, I don't know if some of you heard about the COP21, which is the whole world going to meet, or the presidents of the world going to meet to decide on the roadmap of climate change. Aviation is not part of this. Aviation and IMO, or the International Maritime, is not part of this. However, aviation have a very aggressive, sustainable strategy. Aviation came up with it was the first sector that comes with targets, hardcore targets, in order to reduce emissions. The UAE works very closely with the International Civil Aviation Organization at ICAO, and hopefully by next year in the Assembly we will come up with the system on how to mitigate it and how to have a market-based measures. At the end, the UAE believes in one thing: collaboration and cooperation with our stakeholders is the only way to make sure our strategies and our plans are sustainable, to make sure that our aviation system would last and continue to prosper for long and many, many years to come.
Excellent. We have seen how significant was the impact of aviation on the UAE. My next question is to Amer. How does aviation really impact economic development, and how has it been for Jordan and other countries of the region? What kind of role does aviation play, especially when we see such significant levels of growth?
Thank you very much, Faris. Let me first of all, I'm very glad to be here, seeing all these young men and women of Arab backgrounds, some of Arab backgrounds. It gives us really hope that the future holds good things for our countries amidst all the darkness that we're seeing in our part of the world. Well, aviation is an important sector in any economy, but I go back to what Aysha was saying about a comprehensive economic plan, and I would argue that a lot of the Arab countries don't have comprehensive economic plans. So therefore, transportation has been marginalized. We are behind in most transportation modes. Aviation, in particular, has developed a lot as a result of what the Gulf countries. Definitely, there's a lot of money in the Gulf, so that helped move the industry forward. A lot of the companies in the Gulf were established very recently, but have really turned the industry around. As far as Jordan is concerned, Royal Jordanian contributes to around 3% of the GDP, which is more than a lot of sectors contribute. Agriculture that in Jordan, for instance, contributes to 2%. Aviation is 3%, so that's quite considerable. There are about 50 industries that are supporting the aviation industry in Royal Jordanian in particular. Royal Jordanian employs about 5,000 people, but there are around 20,000 workers in supporting industries, and there are a lot of entrepreneurs that have started businesses actually just to support the airline. There are other modes, obviously, that are as important as aviation, as I think we will be talking about. But I think in the future, aviation will continue to be a major player in the economy. As it also has brought in a lot of impact to tourism. Without Royal Jordanian being a strong national carrier, tourism in Jordan would not have been where it is. Our also trade is also have been affected positively. A lot of the produce, for instance, that Jordan makes, that can be exported to different parts of Europe and the U.S. Without an airline and a strong airline, this would not have been possible. So therefore, I think aviation and airlines will continue to play a major role in the development of our economies.
Excellent. Now, one of the enablers, a key enabler of airlines is really the right infrastructure for them to operate. And this brings our discussion on airports, where there has been and there continues to be significant investments. And one of the things we know is that if as an investment advice, airports are always a much more stable and attractive investment than airlines are. So I turn that question to Rodolfo. I mean, how has the pace of investment in airports really, how has it been, and how can we attract more private sector investments, and with all the benefits that come from private sector investments?
Well, I will start. I'm the only one no Arab here. But I'm very happy and honored to have been invited. I have two daughters born in Jordan, so make me close to this part of the world. And thank you once again. Well, obviously, I will say it in the airport industry is said, sell airlines stocks and buy airports, because as you mentioned, are very interesting investment. But for the investor, but the role they have played in the region is more like how you can make attractive the market. You can see the numbers. I mean, how you are going to hold all those passengers. You have to have infrastructure. You see that how the airlines and the airport and all the additional business are developing the economy. So I think the keywords here are focused mostly on multimodal services that I think is failing the region in terms of connectivity, air, sea, or the roads. We need to understand as well regional airports. I mean, how many people from Iran are here? Or from Saudi Arabia? How many airports do you have?
27.
30 airports. So what happened in many parts of the world is the fact of also the problem with the airspace is to try to decentralize as well your businesses. So regional airports start playing a role, and you have seen in Mexico, taking outside of the region, how the Pacific, the Atlantic, and the middle airports are regionalized. Same happened in Peru, and same happened in my country in Chile. So I think there is a lot of opportunities on that part of the world. One of the other issues is airport cities. Airport cities is a booming, and there is a good example that I have been followed. It's in Oman. Oman has an airport and a port and a sinking in the road, or they already have invested in the road with Saudi Arabia. So are connecting terrestrial, air, and sea. So I think this is a huge opportunity in the region. I think the money will flow anyway. I think it's a good investment, even with all the geopolitical issues that you have. Obviously, it's a matter of pricing, but I think it's a great opportunity. And going just for the statistics to finalize, it's the region that's growing the most. I mean, I don't believe in the 25-year projection, except when I do my business plan to finance an airport. But if you look only 2014 to 18, the region is expecting growth about 6.5%. Asia, who has been is 6.3. So the bet, if you want to bet on the traffic in the region, is the place to invest right now. Yeah.
Excellent. Maybe a follow-on question to you, Rodolfo, in terms of how to attract the private sector more to airports. Have you seen some forms of investments or management agreements to, outright privatization? What, in your opinion, works? And I think this is obviously also an opportunity that many of the audience today would be interested in, because we have many airport development and management companies that offer attractive opportunities.
Well, one model doesn't fit any model. So if I want to centralize in those public-private partnerships, where the private sector participation on these projects. So you have different models, and if I can mention some of them, like in Jordan, where I was 7 years there, we have a public-private BOT project where we build and operate and transfer after 25 years the airport to the government. First thing, the private sector has the efficiency to manage a new airport, an emerging market, and developing economies easier than the government. Also produce a lot of money for the government as well, and this is public information. We deliver an 850 million project to the government of Jordan, and the same period we pay around $500 million. This is public knowledge. So for a small country like Jordan, it's a fantastic deal. It's one of the best deals in that model. But you have management contracts that you have in Egypt. There were, I remember, it was ADP and it was Fraport, same Fraport in Jeddah and Riyadh. Today they have the other one is MENA with TAV and ADP with the private sector participation. Sometimes not necessarily only the money, but the way to deliver the project. The other commercialized are the UAE that are run by the country with the expertise from all around the world. So it's dependent. The demography depends on the country. I think it's the opportunity will be done based on the attractiveness on the traffic. So there are different models at the moment, and the private sector is important. Financing, and just to want to mention this, Jordan was the first hybrid airport financed by Islamic Development Bank, and it's Sharia compliance. So it was the first one. It was hybrid because also we received money from IFC. But MENA was the first in the world to be financed by Sharia compliance financing. And we have an ACI, we have run conference today, so to make the world know that opportunities that you have today in order to finance this type of infrastructure. So I think there is the big opportunity there.
Yeah. Aysha, I think it's clear that in terms of airport investments, there's been a good investments. It kept pace with the growth in aviation, but obviously we have bottlenecks elsewhere. So what are really the other constraints on growth for the aviation sector, especially if we look more into the future?
Of course, with growth come many challenges and responsibilities. I would say challenges, we like to see them as opportunities. We always like to see the positive side in the UAE. I will talk about a few ones. The first one already you have touched on it, Faris, which is the airspace. As you know, the UAE is very small, and the airspace above it is very small. So we always have the constraints of the airspace. But we have been working on strategies when it comes to airspace, which is modernizing our air navigation services. We were the first to adapt the performance-based navigation. We always collaborate with our neighboring space in terms of restructuring of our airspace to increase the efficiencies. And of course, the military, which, in most part of the world, the military controls the majority of airspace. We also have close collaborations with the military in order to share the air routes. The second thing, which also you mentioned, air services agreement. I am not sure how many of you are aware of it, but air services agreement, you always have different camps. You have these countries who are protectionist and do not want to have competition against their flag carriers, and you will have the open skies and the liberalized countries. And we've dealt with both of them. Yes, it's very difficult, especially with our airlines. It is very scary when we negotiate new bilaterals because some countries feel threatened. But we've seen also the countries that would approach the government and ask us to sign bilaterals to have our airlines come to their countries because they see the need and they see the opportunities there. Third or fourth challenge, which is the next generation of aviation professionals. Now, as you know, the UAE nationals are very little. We form 10% of the whole population. We are 1 million. Our population is 10 million. So no matter what we do in this area, we will always rely on expats, and we will always rely on young generations from other countries, not necessarily UAE nationals. Now, our strategies with government, there's an aggressive nationalization strategy in order to bring the new generations to aviation. We target them from high schools, and also we have career fairs, which the government also manages. Every airline almost have a cadet program. The cadet program takes the high school students from graduation until they are on the right seat on the Airbus or a Boeing. And also the airports, they have programs to develop soft skills, because aviation is not only pilots and engineers and air traffic controllers. We need lawyers, we need managers, we need politicians. So these soft skills, you cannot teach them in universities, so airports develop their own programs. Now, the last 2 points is, we live in a dynamic world. Today's challenges are not really the same challenges that we face in the future. Two very interesting challenges, which I see them actually as an opportunities, is the RPAS, which is the remotely piloted aircrafts. And the US now, you have major operations of remotely piloted aircrafts. Now, this brings new opportunities in innovation, and I'm sure that you know probably how it has been used in deliveries of cards or surveillance. One challenge it poses on aviation is when it is close to the aircrafts or airports, because these remotely piloted aircrafts normally poses safety challenges when it comes to landing aircrafts. And the last emerging issue, which I think one of the most interesting, is the airspace. As you know, soon we might travel to the space, and these airplanes will take off from a regular airport. Now, the challenges it poses, these airports are going to take off so fast and they will reach the outer space, but they will penetrate the civil airspace. So this is a major challenge for the regulatory bodies to make sure that this is within the regulation of civil aviation and not something separate from civil aviation. And I'm sure you will hear about this very soon as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Very interesting to think this opened an angle to discuss also future opportunities, which we will come back to in a minute. My next question to Amer. Aviation is certainly part of an economic ecosystem, right? We have been discussing its impact on tourism, on business development, on various aspects of the economy. And there is also an opportunity to expand the impact of aviation, as Rodolfo was saying, through a multimodal system. With all the rail development that is happening and really connecting, I mean, obviously the Gulf is taking the lead on in terms of primarily rail investments. These will end up connecting to the north of the Middle East, the Levant area, which will ultimately connects to Europe. What impact will it have economically, and what kind of opportunities such a development might really create?
First of all, let's agree on one thing. We're about 200 years late in establishing railway systems in the Arab world, and I think part of it is a lot of reasons for that is that we're new countries. Basically, we're talking about 100, 150 years. Some countries are 40 years. So, in essence, and there are a lot of political problems amongst us. So, sitting on one table and agreeing how to have traffic rights in aviation or to have traffic rights in railway is really an issue. The Gulf countries have spearheaded now the establishment of railways, and I think it will go as fast as the aviation industry. This will have tremendous impact on trade, on movement of natural persons. Today, believe it or not, only 5% of trade amongst the Arab countries is between themselves. 95% of the trade is with the rest of the world. So just imagine when you have a facilitated easiness of transporting goods amongst our countries, what impact that would have on the economies and on the trade, and what kind of opportunities that will have in employment, in entrepreneurship. I think it will be tremendous. But there are also challenges because the industry itself needs subsidy. Without having some sort of a subsidy, it is going to be very difficult to have the private sector come and invest. The returns on investment in these kinds of projects is very low. So having to deal with that, I think, will become an issue, and it will become more of an issue to countries that don't have the means to do it. My country, Jordan, for instance, will not be able to afford a railway system. And if Saudi Arabia has a railway system, Jordan doesn't have a railway, how will you connect Saudi Arabia with, for instance, with Syria or with Europe? So I think the essence of what we need to do is to think comprehensively, think about an economy that is integrated, and that how the railway system could benefit all of the countries, and maybe, hopefully, have some sort of a fund where all the countries will contribute and also will reap the fruits of that, because I think that will have a major effect on the economic development of all our countries.
Yes, I mean, that's a very good point, because obviously such systems tend to be more, there's an element of reciprocity. So they tend to be beneficial for both countries. So if one country subsidizes the other, quote unquote, that benefits will be reaped. I'd like to really benefit from Rodolfo's experience. I mean, in your home country, Chile, with a thriving mineral and copper industry, which is a bit similar to the situation in the Gulf, where actually you have a lot of minerals in addition to the oil. There has been significant development in railways to transport goods. And I also know you have experience also in Oman and other countries with that. So what's your take on this, and what's the potential of this really an integrated transport, multimodal system across the region?
Well, as many of you know, my country is like a spaghetti. So it's 4,300 meters, so kilometers. So it's a large country. So we depend mostly about before the air. We depend on the air transportation and sea transportation. Today it's becoming a multimodal to transport from one side to another, from rails or roads to also the privatized. I mean, the private sector participation, where we have developed toll roads that have allowed that as well to connect the country. So I will tell you, in the 60s, 50s, we were the main producer of potatoes. And the potatoes were in Chiloé, 2,000 kilometers away from Santiago. It was cheaper to bring it from Ecuador or from Peru because we didn't have that transportation. So in 50 years, or let's say less than that, let's say in 30 years, we have developed our multimodal system between roads, railroads, but the railroad cargo, unfortunately, didn't work because it's cheaper the roads for transport passengers. So one thing that I want to see mentioned, that if you go to my country website, you know Spanish, you will see each project that is being done, projects that are going to happen, and you can see the contracts. And this is one of the things when you ask me about attract investors, I think that part is very important. The legal base to bring investors through PPP law to concession laws is very important, because are the base in order to could finance those projects well. Not only the fact of to have the money, the good investment, but you have to have a legal base. And to answer, Amer, I know that Jordan has difficulties in terms of financing those type of projects, but sometimes, and I think consultants like ourselves, is helping to understand the global impact on the economy. It's not just the impact on that specific area, isolated. You need to see how much it will impact the entire global economy of the country. And I'm obviously managed better airport, Cyprus, where I was as well. Determined there were a low traffic, so determined that each passenger bring about 10 euros. So they decided to give 3 euros to the airlines for each new passenger. So they benefit from the 7, because otherwise they wouldn't have that passenger. So they really view as a global. And I think Amer is very right in the saying that the Arab world need to look each other and try to work together. Otherwise, will not work. Because in my view, in the case of Jordan, I think it should be not even a train from Aqaba to Amman. It's rather the train between Aqaba and the Aqaba to the world, and maybe with Saudi in order to the transit. But that is my contribution.
Excellent. I would like to, before we open it up for questions, I'd like to maybe give each and every one of you maybe 1 minute to briefly say what opportunities you see for our bright MBA graduates here in the transportation sector, in the future of the transportation sector in the Middle East. And I'll probably say also a couple of words about surface transport, which we haven't discussed extensively. You would like to start?
I think the biggest opportunity will be in the UAE. For one reason, the majority of us is expats and we have a growing sector. And we always look for innovative people and people with fresh ideas, and especially young generations. The average age in the UAE is 30 years, so this is the perfect timing for graduates, especially with the right mindset, with the right visions of which sector they want to go to. One thing an advice, because I've been one day, a pilot, and I thought that because I was a commercial pilot, that's the only thing I could do. And when I went further to the Civil Aviation Authority, I realized aviation, it's not only about pilots. You can be a lawyer, you can be a manager, you can be an IT expert, you can be a politician. These are all soft skills that are needed within the aviation. It's just knowing which organization you want to join and having your background. And Harvard, I don't know if the majority is Harvard graduate, but Harvard is one of the best, if not the best university. That's the name carries itself. And then specializing or taking few courses in aviation, something related to your field, and applying to jobs in the UAE will open so many doors. And the limits is the sky in the UAE. And we have an innovation sector, and we are based on digital world, which I'm sure that all of you are already on top of that game.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. You saw the numbers. I mean, there is a shortage in our profession. 2007, ICAO and ICAO decided to develop a program to certify and accredit airport professionals. And Aysha said that there are not enough, and there will not be enough. I had the opportunity to be instructor some of the programs. I have been in Kuala Lumpur now. I'm going to Taiwan. I have been in Gambian Jordan Institute as well. I was panelist in Abu Dhabi was, I can't remember, Abu Dhabi. And the main issue that is all rainbow of opportunity there. But I seen for the startups, I seen yesterday I had the opportunity to see the competition. We didn't talk about security, and I know that I had to bring it. I'm not Arab here, but security is one of the main issues in our airport. And I think technologies will be the only one to help to have the real seamless process in an airport. Aviation is a fantastic industry. You get addicted to it. So I will, all those people, smart people around here, they want to start a business, focus on technology, and help airports and to make a seamless process.
Thank you.
I just want to talk about my experience as CEO. I think my biggest challenge was finding the right people. Because as Aysha rightfully mentioned in her interventions, that aviation is not just pilots and stewardesses and engineers. You're finding a lawyer who understands anything about leasing contracts, for instance, or purchasing contracts is quite a challenge. And this is an addictive sector. If you understand aviation, if you work with aviation, you love it to the point where you don't want to leave it. And there's a lot of money in it. Because and when I see the figures here, the dollar signs start rolling. But in all honesty, you need to be specialized because this is a specialized sector. It's It's not a sector that you can learn in a very short time. And the more time you accumulate in experience and understanding the sector and the challenges within the sector, I think you could be, the more successful you are. UAE is a country that's going to need a lot of skilled people in aviation, but also countries such as Jordan. We're finding now that we are, for instance, now the vice presidents at RJ, we're bringing people from outside because simply we cannot find people who understand anything about the commercial operations of an airline. Again, this is a specialized field. This is something that takes a lot of diligence, a lot of learning, a lot of understanding, and a lot of patience, because sometimes things are not as clear as one thinks. The challenges are an everyday challenge. Having to deal, for instance, with the Gulf carriers is something that I lost my hair 2 years ago. I had a lot of hair, now I don't. But it's not only about employment in the sector, it's also about entrepreneurship. There's a lot of potential in establishing backward linkages in everything, in services, in goods, and I think the sky is the limit. And if I go back 30 years ago, this is what I would do, aviation.
Excellent. I think this is a good segue also to discuss maybe one angle to those opportunities related to technology, which I think also all of you have mentioned. If we think about the technologies that are actually transforming our lives, transforming business, transforming society, well, they're actually transforming aviation, they're also transforming surface transport. So whether we talk about digital platforms, data analytics, artificial intelligence. And just to give you an idea, maybe I'd like to go back to one of my slides here because we have an interesting listing. If we go back to our example here, and by the way, this applies to aviation as much as it applies to a metro system. If we look at the typical journey of a passenger, and just imagine the amount, the services and the multiple providers that will be needed. And actually, these are some of the projects that we do in consulting and trying to really work with transport authorities or transport owners or operators to make it more exciting for people. For example, people like in Saudi Arabia who don't have any public transport system or hardly have any public transport system, and suddenly spending about $100 billion on transport systems in cities. How will we get them to use it? Okay, so we have to create a nice, attractive digital experience. And actually, so if we look at this hypothetical example of a 32-year-old engineer, he gets a call from a friend. He needs to he can buy tickets on mobile and pay on mobile. Now, for example, Apple Pay and other payment systems. He can actually go look at Google Maps and find his way around, because it's not as easy to find your way if you go out of the station and you're walking the streets. He would like to have a very interactive features. He would like to have entertainment throughout, even as you go through tunnels where you lose your network coverage. Okay, so this is all made possible by today's technologies. Moving on to where he arrives at the end, and the mobile finds out he likes Italian food, and he gets prompted. He gets a notification on his mobile that there's a Italian restaurant nearby. So that's what we call location-based services that telecom carriers actually also provide, and others. So there's a whole gamut of opportunities that actually, and this is just, by the way, the front-end systems. This is what passengers experience. In the back-end system, we've seen that all transport systems now are equipped with sensors. So we could really measure through data in real time what is happening to infrastructure everywhere. I mean, sensors are cheap, they can be everywhere. So everything you've heard about the Internet of Things and our ability to really understand how we can best maintain infrastructure, how we can really maintain high standards of safety at all times. These are really some of the issues we work with as consultants, but also some of the opportunities that I'm sure some of you will actually tackle as entrepreneurs or as executives in technology companies. So again, a sector that is really exciting and really interesting. I encourage you all to explore it and to see what career opportunities you can find in it. On that note, I'd like to open it up for questions. We have, I think, another 10 minutes for that.
Well, I was interested in knowing what you thought of the economic consequences of subsidies being provided to airlines in the Gulf region, specifically Emirates, Etihad, and Qatar Airways. And if you think that's fair for other emerging airlines in the region, specifically in North Africa, such as Egypt Air, Tunisian Air, and
Royal Jordanian.
And Lebanon.
Thank you for your question. That's the biggest question on the table now for our carriers since almost 6 months to a year. First of all, let me tell you, in aviation, what governs relationships between countries is not the GATT, it's not within the World Trade Organization, it's bilateral relations. Now, if the UAE carriers want to fly to any points in the world, they cannot just wake up one day and go fly. There is a bilateral agreement that governs the relationship. And if Egypt wants, by the way, Egypt is one of the most restrictive bilaterals we have between the UAE and Egypt. If Egypt thinks that we are a threat to their airlines, they would limit the number of frequencies. That is through bilateral agreements. Now, subsidies, you cannot prove that there is a subsidy. That's number one. Number two, our carriers already posted online, the recent allegation which became public. There is a whole document to defy these allegations. Number three is to define subsidies, it's impossible. I can call Chapter 11 in the US subsidy, for example, and that's like a public subsidy. Our airlines, I can say the government does not subsidize them, especially Emirates Airlines. Emirates Airlines started with 2 leased airplanes, and the governor of Dubai told them, if you don't make money within the first year, I'm not going to renew the lease. So it is based on commercially viable plans, and if our airlines see that there is no viability in flying to a certain points, they don't fly. We don't, as a government, we don't pay them to fly to certain points. If they lose, they stop. One thing that I have mentioned is actually it's not the countries that set subsidies, it's competition airlines that says, these airlines receive subsidies, not necessarily because they receive subsidies, but because they are failing, they need to blame it on something else. So I can tell you the UAE airlines do not receive subsidies. They operate on commercially viable business plans, and they are commercially based. And at the end, it's the consumer. If you feel that we are subsidized, you don't fly with Emirates and you don't fly with Etihad.
Can I take this a bit further? What Aysha said is absolutely correct. What governs relations is not WTO. There are no rules that govern international relations vis-a-vis transportation. The rule today is liberalization. So everybody should be looking to liberalize. And in all honesty, if you can't compete in the world of today, you're out of the market. You survive 1 year, 2 years. The mistakes that countries such as mine and yours, if you're from Egypt, is we're confused. We don't know the airline. We call it a national carrier. We want a strong national carrier. We don't want to support it. But at the end of the day, we hope that it can survive amidst all this competition. I think the competition has become fiercer, and I think it's going to be the legacy airlines will face a bigger problem in surviving. And let's not forget that a lot of the airlines in Europe have gone out of business. Alitalia was bought. KLM was the strongest airline at some point. Now it's not. Most of the airlines in the U.S. have gone through Chapter 11 at one time. We call them Chapter 11 5 times, and Chapter 55 and Chapter 66. But again, I mean, it is an issue, and the proving of subsidy is almost impossible. You will never be able to do that, and that's, I think, a lost track if you're trying to go through. I think also the Emirates Airlines is different than the other airlines. Is the model, the three airlines, if we want to specify these three airlines as the giants, each has its own strategy. One depends on a bigger network, a nice airport, a nice city. Everybody wants to come to Dubai. You have Etihad that is also more into investing in other airlines outside, in real estate. And Qatar is a different story. Maybe it's a different model. But again, the three models work, and they are a reality to be reckoned with. So if you get boxed in a corner, I think as Arab states, it's in our interest that these companies survive and get bigger, because that's, again, in a world of today of economic collaboration and economic integration, it's in our interest. If they're stronger, we're stronger as an economy. This is, and this is my opinion about this.
So, everybody, unfortunately, we're going to have to limit it to one last question. So, if you have a question you think is very, brilliant, and
We have time.
Because we don't want to keep the next panel waiting. So, the person with the most brilliant questions seems to be right there.
Hi, I study at McGill University, and I have actually two questions. This question is for I wanted to ask about Jordan's plans for transport within the city, on-ground transport, because I've been there this summer. There's a lot of issues with traffic, especially with incoming refugees and incoming immigrants from neighboring countries. There are huge traffic issues, and they've been flooded. For example, Rodolfo has been prolonged for 3 years or more, and it's been continuously postponed. It goes 1 kilometer strip of land. So what are Jordan's sustainable plans over the long term? And my second question is for Captain Aysha. I just wanted to ask you mentioned the drones that are drone technology, and I know that the UAE has been reported to be importing drones from the state of Israel. And Israel uses them to enforce the occupation. So I was just wondering how the UAE is going to be employing those drones, and what are the plans for those drones in the long term? Thank you.
I'm going to answer first because I have no idea.
Please, yes, ma'am.
We don't have relationship with Israel. That's to start your question with. And buying drones from Israel, that I have no idea that happened, and I doubt that it is the case.
As far as transportation in cities, again, transportation has not been an issue on the agenda in most of the Arab states, and actually in most of the developing states. Amman, for instance, and you're obviously Jordanian, we've never taken transportation into the urban development part of Amman. Therefore, we built the city, and then now we expect that we need to have infrastructure to do a subway system, which is impossible, or to have a light rail system. It's impossible. It's not going to happen. Therefore, I think we will continue to suffer as Jordanians and a lot of the states around us, because we did not plan our life well. And I think that's a reality. Unless we build cities, we expand, we go to outside, build new cities where transportation is part of any development that is in that part.
Yeah.
So again, sorry for having to cut this short, but thanks so much everybody for being here.